Viewers, there's storm over AAIB's preliminary report in the Ahmedabad plane crash case in which 260 people were killed. As per the AAIB report, the fuel cut-off switches of both engines transitioned from run to cut-off position one after another within a time gap of 1 second. This led to the snapping of fuel supply to both engines, causing them to lose power. However, the report doesn't mention what caused the fuel switches to move. The preliminary report also contains a paraphrased account of the communication that took place inside the cockpit. One of the pilots is heard asking the other, "Why did he cut off?" The other pilot responds, "I did not." This is the only thing mentioned in the report with regard to communication in the cockpit. But soon after the report came out, late on Friday night, early morning Saturday, some of the aviation experts floated the pilot suicide theory, claiming that one of the pilots knowingly cut off the fuel supply. This is even as the Civil Aviation Minister on Saturday warned against jumping the gun.
I don't think we should jump into any conclusions on this. I truly believe we have the most wonderful workforce in terms of pilots and the crew in the whole world. I have to appreciate all the efforts the pilots and the crew in this country are putting into the aviation. They are the backbone of this civil aviation. They are the primary resource of civil aviation, and we care for the welfare and the well-being of our pilots also. So let's not jump to any conclusions at this stage. Let us wait for the final report.
Pilots' bodies are fuming over the preliminary findings, saying that investigations suggest a bias towards pilot error. After Airline Pilots Association of India said the AAIB report has led to the presumption of pilot guilt, the ICPA, or the Indian Commercial Pilots Association, has slammed what they called reckless and unfounded insinuation of pilot suicide theory floated by some. Meanwhile, the DGCA has ordered airlines operating Boeing aircraft to carry out inspection of the locking mechanism of fuel control switches. The inspection order comes 7 years after the FAA advisory mentioned it in 2018. Airlines have been told to comply by July 21st. The question is, why is the DGCA waking up after 7 years? And why is there an attempt to jump the gun and blame the pilots? Let's quickly take this across to our guest now joining us. With us is J.S. Rawat, former Joint Director General of the DGCA. Captain S.S. Panisar is a former Director of Flight Safety and Director Training, who's also joining us, and he was erstwhile Indian Airlines pilot as well. Let's quickly go across to Mr. Rawat first. Mr. Rawat, there are those who are questioning that if Singapore Airlines, Etihad can do it internally as far as airlines are concerned, given the AAIB report, what about airlines here? And is the DGCA perhaps waking up a bit late, because there are other countries like the UK where their own civil aviation regulators have already issued similar advisories to check the Boeing fuel switch locks?
Okay, as I mentioned in other day also, basically this was a advisory. It was not a mandatory, which has been pointed out in the report also. The question is that at this stage, why it is going up, where this investigation and checking of these switches are being conducted. The FAA circular, which very clearly says that you have to check this thing, and if it is moving from one place to another place without lifting the thing, it means switch is faulty. Now this switch is being used every day when the aircraft is starting and when the aircraft is shut down. Has any report come from any air pilot or airline that these switches are not, these switches are faulty? Now what is being done today? It is being done because the people are raising the question, okay, please check it and find out whether there is a problem or not. So that's what I think what's happening right now.
All right, Mr. Panisar, do you agree with that it's not a mandatory requirement and therefore it was not implemented earlier? Do you agree with that assessment? Because
what happens in the airlines? Airlines order part from some vendor. They probably at that time, point of time 2018, they found there were certain the vendor had supplied some switches which were not proper, and they were having the faulty mechanism. So accordingly, they asked everybody to carry out this check and also to replace where they have proved that the switches are faulty. So they have the circular have two parts. You check for every this thing. If it is faulty, change it. And for those certain number of the series of the aircraft, certain number of parts, they have to be mandatorily checked and replaced.
Okay, I want Captain Panesar to respond to that. Captain Panesar, is that an acceptable explanation to you? Because it was not mandatory and therefore whatever procedures were required at that time were followed.
Madhav, it is given in the checklist. What is the checklist? The pilots have to follow that. But let me tell you one thing. Boeing has said there is nothing fault with the fuel switches, number one. Number two, this report cannot be accepted because they do not have any professional. Do they have any 787 commander examiner? Do they have 787 engineer to advise them? There's nobody professional in this committee to give the report. And if you go in the past record, it is a parampara. DGCA is always a person who dies, they put the blame on the pilot. Now in this investigation also, they'll ultimately put the blame on the pilot. But this will not bring out the correct result of what led to this crash and all that. Now, I would also like to tell you something. The Air India, they have no confidence in the employee. They don't trust their employee. They use vindictive policies and all. That is the result of this. All these same people have no faith in pilots, engineers and commercial. They are very unhappy working under this Air India. This is the beginning of the end of Air India if they continue these type of policies.
Okay, let's go one by one. Let's go one by one. You know, the point over here, Mr. Rawat, many are saying, and many who are jumping to conclusion that this is pilot error are saying, that are we quick to blame the pilots who are no longer here to defend themselves? Because that's the easiest thing to do, because then the engine manufacturer gets off, the airline, the aircraft manufacturer gets off, and also the airline. Do you agree with that assessment, Mr. Rawat?
Okay, these are the views expressed by the independent experts. It is these views are not given by the either AAIB or DGCA or anybody or airlines.
But it's suggested in the AAIB report, because they refer only one line. Like, you know, if I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but they only say in the CVR recording that did you switch it off? No, I did not. Now, what has happened? In what context? Are they even talking about fuel switches or something else? We don't know. Whereas they have given a great amount of detail as far as the fuel switches and them being turned off are concerned. So the context is not very clear. And that's why, therefore, you have people jumping conclusions.
Yes. Why the people are doubting about the report also? The people are having the doubt about the report. Actually, what has happened from the very beginning, the things have not been properly done in this case. Appointment of the investigator was not done. Even the NTSB and Boeing team has come. That time also it was not there. We came to know from the final report, which was released on 12th morning, the 11th morning, that this is the composition of the team. There is no order of the team when it was formed and when the order was issued. That is not known to anybody. That's why the people are asking that people have not signed it also. The people are, general public is raising this kind of allegation and doubt about the report.
All right. Mr. Panesar, your response, because there are serious questions now as to what will happen from here on. There will be a final report that will come in 30 days. What is your advice to the investigators?
See, the final report will take much more time. We don't know when will it come. I appreciate Honorable Minister saying that don't give and jump on the conclusion, wait for the final report. But what this preliminary report says, it doesn't give any conclusion. It seems that this report is written before the crash even taken place. They give details of the pilot, aircraft, but they're not giving the main reason. What we are interested in to find out the reason that led to the crash of this aircraft, so that all experts can give their opinion to give recommendation to stop such recurrence in the future. But this report does not have any professional to advise these people. I want to know from the wreckage expert, do they have any wreckage expert who has gone and seen the wreckage, the position of fuel, such a strong impact? With that impact, even the switches can change position.
Yes,
Only
some of those
wreckage
things have been
expert will give you
recorded.
the
Some of those aspects have been recorded, but there are several questions that still linger. And Mr. J.S. Rawat as well as Captain Panesar, those questions will continue, and certainly we hope that the final report sets to rest a lot of the speculation, and many would say unnecessary speculation, that's currently underway. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And one of those who's raised their voice against what they call is not just the leaks, but also more transparency required as far as the AAIB probe report is concerned is Member of Parliament Priyanka Chaturvedi. She's joining us on the show. Thank you so much, ma'am, for speaking to us. What are your issues or flaws that you are pointing out as far as the preliminary report that has been released by the AAIB is concerned?
No, AAIB, I have written a letter to the aviation minister today where I have expressed my concerns, where I said that before the report was released to the people of the country, it was selectively leaked to some media houses internationally, which went on a rampage accusing the Indian pilots. And Indian pilots, Mr. Sabharwal, the Captain Sabharwal, had over 15,000 hours of flying. We had Captain Kundar, who was along with him, who was a co-pilot there, who had over 5,000 hours of flying. So to undermine them and say that it was their fault is a bit unfortunate. The second problem I find with the interim investigation is how the report was only released way past midnight at 2 a.m. Indian Standard Time, without any briefing, without any ministerial briefing, without the DGCA officials coming and talking about what were the key findings of the report. The other problem that I find is that those who were on the panel of the investigation haven't even taken ownership of that particular report. It is an unsigned report. Then we've also had the Pilots Association coming forward and saying that there is no senior pilot who comes with the expertise of flying, who can, have their inputs. They've even offered their own voluntary services to come on as observers. So these are my findings. And more importantly, the narrative that is being built around this entire investigation and trying to pin the blame on the pilots who are now dead is extremely unfortunate. So those are 4 key concerns which I have raised with regards to this investigative report and the panel that AAIB has formed. And that should be looked into and ensure that there is accountability, ensure that there is transparency, and ensure in the minds of the passengers of India today that when they take to the skies, they are safe. Ensure the pilots that they are not being undermined. Ensure the crew that they will have a safe journey, and there are airlines which will stand by them. So that is something which is right now missing.
Now, while you've been very critical about the foreign press coverage of the report, you believe that there are vested interests at play who want to apportion the blame to pilots for specific reasons.
I think we also have to look at who we're dealing with here. We're dealing with corporate, large conglomerates like the Boeing and like the GE. They're big manufacturers who have big skin in the game. So they would want to deflect any attention. And I've been saying this from day one, right from one captain, who was dressed like a pilot and he would come on television channels to blame the pilots, was extremely unfair and was running a narrative which was against the interests of this entire investigation. So for me, yes, I will continue to criticize anything which pins the blame and goes into a judgment and goes into a narrative which undermines our pilots, their ability, their capability in the eyes of the world, as well as, undermining India's aviation industry globally. Please let's not forget India's aviation industry is one of the fastest growing industry, and there's so much more space to grow. For them to start undermining it would be an unfortunate reality, and that is what the trap that we shouldn't be falling in. And that is why it becomes extremely important to have an absolutely transparent probe and reassure the people of this country that yes, we are in control. Yes, we will hold those people to account who are responsible for this, rather than allowing someone to be scapegoated here.
Absolutely. You mentioned the word scapegoat, and that's very significant because, if you look at the reporting of sections of the Western media which have jumped the gun, which have sort of, connected 2 and 2 where it does not exist, and several experts are speaking out against that, ultimately, it's the pilots who are being made the scapegoat since the final report isn't out yet. Do you share that perception?
No, I totally agree with this. And till we do not have a final report for everybody to jump the gun and scapegoat the pilots, especially Captain Sabharwal, who came with over 15,000 hours of flying, as well as was training other pilots as part of the Air India crew, is extremely unfortunate. Even Captain Kundar, for that matter, he came with over 5,000 hours of flying. So to just scapegoat them and overlooking the problems that have been, flagged, as far as Boeing is concerned, their safety is concerned, their safety mechanisms are concerned, overlooking the advisory which was issued in 2018, again issued in 2020, overlooking that even the report, the preliminary investigative report says that there was a double engine failure. So to jump the gun and blame the pilots would be extremely unjustified and also undermining, and I've said this earlier too, undermining Indian aviators, undermining their ability, their capability in front of the global world, as well as in undermining India's aviation industry and aviation space. So that is something we should be wary of. when international agencies jump to the conclusion. I was very disappointed with the fact that the report investigation, some parts of the investigation were already leaked to some media houses and were already reporting before the Indian public got to know of it.
Right, and in your letter, you've mentioned transparency in authorship and accountability. Now, the cockpit voice recorder captures one pilot asking the other, did he cut it off? To which the person replies, the other pilot replies that he didn't. It's unclear whether the reference was to the fuel cutoff switch or not, and therefore do you believe that greater clarity and transparency are needed, and in the interest of that, the complete CVR recording should be made public, the transcript at least?
Absolutely. I personally feel, in the interest of not just transparency, to reassure the passengers of this country, to reassure the entire aviation space, to reassure the pilots, to reassure the crew, to reassure the world that India is absolutely transparent in terms of accountability, in terms of ensuring that there's absolute safety protocols that have been maintained. That is why this interim report as well as the final report would be important. So selective leakages, selective recordings of that entire cockpit voice recorder is extremely unfortunate, and they need to be clean upfront. And I would say that I would urge the Civil Aviation Minister, in the spirit of keeping India at the forefront, that we need to do this. We owe this to the people of this country, to our own nation, to be able to provide a transparent and accountable report to the people of the country, as well as global. Let
me also ask you, what's your opinion on the action that has been taken by the DGCA? Do you think the DGCA had enough time to act on it, given that there are advisories that have been issued by other aviation authorities and regulators? The original advisory was issued in 2018 by FAA, and the entire issue of the potential disengagement of the fuel control switch locking feature. However, we've only seen inspections advised after various other airlines globally, including Etihad, including Singapore Airlines, have actually happened following the AAIB report.
No, let me tell you that I'm nowhere praising the DGCA. I was asked that has there been any step taken towards reassuring the people? And I said after this letter came out, we've seen DGCA write something where it says that everyone using Boeing 787 series, 737 series should be checking the fuel switch issue. And this is something that is coming, perhaps Singapore Airlines is doing it, South Korean Airlines is doing it, Etihad is doing it, various other airlines are doing it, and something which is long overdue since 2018. So making it mandatory now could be too little too late, but let's also reassure the people of this country that even if every step needs to be taken, we will take, and those who need to be held accountable will be held. So this particular step that has happened is just one of the many steps to go to reassure the people that yes, we are serious about this investigation, and we will ensure that every single culprit is brought to task and justice is not denied to anybody at all, especially the victims of that particular air crash.
All right, Priyanka Chaturvedi, Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament and, of course, leader of Shiv Sena UBT, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here on Times Now. And we have some breaking news coming in at the moment. It's an inside scoop on the Indo-US trade deal. The India-US interim deal is set to be signed this week. Massive development there. Big news breaking here on Times Now, where India has agreed on issues pertaining to agriculture. There's no compromise, however, on GM crops. There is an agreement on 10% basis tariff of Indian goods. Blanket tariff on goods is not possible, India has told the United States, and Washington has agreed to that. There's no agreement on dairy, only on processed food items, where one tariff on all forms of automobile has been agreed upon, and the expected average Indian tariff on Indian goods is going to be about 11.5%, US goods to have a 7% tariff. Rishabh, the big one is going to be agriculture. What exactly has India agreed to in this department will be something that will be very keenly watched out for. Take us through what the decision is.
Well, Madhav, what we're given to understand, multiple sources have confirmed to us, confirmed to Times Now, that agriculture, the language on agriculture is there in the interim, trade deal between India and United States. India has agreed to lower tariff on products like apple nuts, which will include blueberry, blackberry and other such agricultural products. GM crops is something which is a red line, and India has very categorically said that there cannot be any compromise on the GM crops. India will not accept GM crops. That is something that India is also very cautious about here, because India has to do an EU FTA by end of this year. UK FTA has already been finalized. We have broken this on times now that end of this month we'll have
well, a big one indeed if India manages to score that trade deal in the interim, and that's certainly going to be a big feather in the cap if India is able to get the kind of terms that you're talking about. Of course, all of this is subject to all of these issues and conditions being confirmed, but nevertheless, big news break here there. Thanks so much, Rishabh, for joining us with that input.